don't know whether you want an honest answer, but discrete mathematics is to some extent easier if you want to start to work on mathematics, because it has this feature. It's mostly elementary, or at least a large part of it, as opposed to the continuous mathematics, if I might say this. You have to learn much more. And because I didn't start as a mathematician, I first studied at the university for doctors. And then I left the whole thing, and then I worked in the factory. When I started, I didn't start as a mathematician, just like a math phys teacher. And so we didn't get too much mathematics. So therefore it was easier to work on discrete mathematics. It doesn't mean that it is inferior, but it's just different. And if you want to start, then it is easier. At least you can start it earlier than with the other subjects. Has been. Okay, but that is only my opinion, but maybe some of the people share it, that a long time ago combinatorics was not considered to be at least a main area of mathematics or important area of mathematics. But it changed drastically. If I am correct to some extent, then the computers made the difference, because now for the computers there are algorithms, and by nature most of them are discrete. So computers, existence of computers changed the whole landscape. So now combinatorics is more or less considered as part of so-called real mathematics. Very good question. I usually worked on problems which were posed by others. And then some of the, yes, I had also some problems which I proposed. My main research work is not about conjectures and then giving new problems, but rather trying to solve the problems which others posed. There are many kinds of mathematics. Tim Gowers, the great mathematician, so he really describes that there are two types of mathematics: the theory part, they have a foundation of they found theorems and so on, and the problem solving. It's not that simple but it's more or less correct. And unfortunately I am a so-called problem solver, which really was considered also to be a little bit inferior to start some new area, maybe rightfully so, but nowadays it's okay. But I didn't want to work on it, it's just by chance. I wanted to solve some other things. And then I assumed that the Loránd's and Eötvös's conjecture was proved. So I came up with the proof for something different thing. And then Eötvös told me that there are two problems which might prove. First, the important part was proved by Euler, which is it's a nice thing that you prove the same theorem as Euler, but it has some not so nice features. Yes, you cannot publish anything which was published by Euler. Good question. The answer is not straightforward, because what I did, then I started to work on a special case when I was like 25. Just finished the university, and then I had some partial success, but not really big one. And then I went to Russia because I knew that my background was weak and I wanted to study real mathematics. But then I realized that in Russia, I was already at that time 27. There were students there, age 20, who knew much more than me, and it was clear to me that I never will be able to learn that much, though they were much younger than me. Many of them are famous now, like Margulis, who is Kazhdan, who is also great, and Bernstein, so these big shots. So can you imagine, you have no background and then you are put together with these youngsters, frightening. So I didn't learn too much. I just started to work on my old problems, and Gelfand was my supervisor, and he understood that I am not able to learn that kind of mathematics, and he let me to work on my old things. So my dissertation was about elementary problems, though Gelfand is known for, and is found in many new areas of function analysis and many other things. Maybe 5 years, 4 or 5 years later, by chance I came back to the problem. I just was working at the bank of the Danube, and then by chance I started to think about it again. And of course, luck is involved for sure. So I was lucky then with in relatively short time I was able to prove this theorem. But again, luck played most part of it. I had the same ideas 5 years ago, except in some different way I interpreted it. Right, it's a very weak mathematical theory in the sense that the proof is easy. But then, of course, when you have this kind of result, I didn't think that it was any interest, tell you the truth. So at the time, I needed this lemma for something else, which is forgotten. It was not that important question, but I was interested in the other question. And as a tool, I needed something like the regularity lemma. So I proved something which is similar, but not the same. And then later, a year later, I went for a conference, and I didn't have results. And of course, you had to stand in front of the blackboard. And then I, in desperation, found the regularity lemma. And even at that time, I felt a little bit shameful that I came up at the conference with such a simple proof and simple. And then later, I don't know why it became, and then people value it more than it deserves.
I'm not too sure about that.
Well, the mathematical community is biased. Okay, it's not on the record. It's a very nasty question, because it is very hard to think. Because now, but there is now this network theorem. So networks are everywhere nowadays. So it's a statement in network theory. So therefore, people believe that it was one of the theorem which started or might have started. I don't know. So I am not that philosophical. But later, yes, I agree that it's somewhat a philosophical statement than a mathematical. I work on a particular problem, but then I don't see the future of it, or sometimes even then how it is related to some other things. And then there are many mathematical problems, not only mine, but in general. In mathematics, there is sometimes many people actually believe that mathematics is just an intellectual exercise, not so important. But there is some results, and many times it turns out to be the case, then it becomes important. Actually, even important, it has important applications. So when you are working, unless if you definitely not working on some problems in applied mathematics, then you just work on your own so-called problem in theory. And then many times, fortunately, that is the kind of nature of mathematics, at least I like to believe it, then it becomes later, maybe 20, 30 years later, important. Hard to say, yes, there is. Of course, there is, but it is just thinking of mathematics. So there is some kind of there is a notion that mathematical thinking, I am not sure then this is the truth, but you just start to work on things, and then even you don't even know then which methods to attacks. And most probably, at least this is the case with me, that most of the time I had many successful attempts before I found the so-called solution. But I am sure I am not alone. For most of the mathematicians do face the same thing. The thinking. Then this is an occupation. And then then this is useful. So not only for mathematicians, but if you consider the community of mathematicians, then they really contribute to the world very, very seriously, and they are very useful. And you don't have to judge one mathematician, maybe it's too theoretical, but the community together, and then you should appreciate them. The mathematics contribution is just the same as the other science contribution. It's not an abstract and so on outside of the world.